Hello and welcome back to PowerPointer 257 C++ tutorial series. In this statement, we'll be covering if statements, else if statements, as well as else statements. And this is really when programming starts to become really dynamic and really cool because you can make procedural programs that will do certain things based on certain values or print out certain things based on certain inputs and really just be very dynamic and do a lot of really fun and cool things. So without further ado, let's get into it. So remember in our last video, we talked about truth values, we talked about just logical operators and operations. For example, if we use the comparison operator, compare if 3 is equal to 3, we know that this is going to print out a 1, right? Because the statement is true. So this similar true or false logic is going to apply with if statements. And so that's where we're going to start today. So the syntax of writing an if statement is if, parentheses, and then these brackets. And inside these parentheses is going to go whatever statement you want to make. For example, if we declared an integer in x equal to 5, right? And then we have said x is greater than 5. If x is greater than 5, we're going to print out the word hi. Now if we run this, we're going to see we're going to see that we actually don't print out anything. The reason for this is because for this if statement to evaluate, to perform whatever operations occur within these closed brackets, this statement right here needs to evaluate to true. So if we change this to greater than or equal to 5, we can see that it prints out hi because now this statement is true because even though if x isn't greater than 5, it's equal to 5. Which is perfectly valid here, right? And so then, but what if we didn't have use the greater than equal sign, right? It's perfectly valid to make another if statement. If x is greater than 3, we're going to print out hello. And we can see that it print out hello because even though this didn't evaluate true, this one did. And with these if statements, you can make many if statements at one after another, and it's going to check each and every one of them. Now, what if we, instead of saying x is greater than 5, we said x is greater than 4? What is going to happen here? Really quick, I'm just going to put end lines on these. And when we do that, what happens? It prints hi hello. And the reason for that is because even though this one evaluated to true, it didn't stop there with if statements. With if statements, it'll keep going as long as these conditions are true. It's going to check every single if statement. Now, let's start talking about our second statement. So we covered if statements. I'm going to change this back to if x is equal to greater than 5, right? And we know that this statement isn't true. I'm going to delete this. But instead of typing an if statement, I'm going to type else if. Else if x is greater than 3. Cout hello. And we can see that it runs perfectly well. An else if can almost be looked at in certain cases as a safety net for your if statement. If your initial if statement doesn't evaluate to true, you can follow it up with many other else if statements, and these will kind of be safety nets. Now, a bit of a difference between the if statement and the else if statement, as we can see. So remember when we had the if statements just now, and we had two if statements back to back that were both true, right? It evaluated the first one, and then it didn't stop there. It kept evaluating. It evaluated the second one and printed out both outputs. Else if statements are a bit different in that regard. So let's say else if x is greater than 4, right? We're going to see out let's see out print out left shift operator, right? Again, on this line, we're going to see that even though this statement wasn't true, was true rather, this statement didn't actually evaluate. The reason for this is because unlike purely if statements, an else if statement, as soon as the first one evaluates to true, none of the other else ifs are going to evaluate. And so finally, so that kind of covers else if statements, right? You can have an initial if statement, and then you can follow it up with else ifs, however many else ifs you want. But those are a bit of different rules. The reason I wanted to cover those, a lot of times in beginning computer science classes, that's something that gets tested, right? They'll put 3 if statements in a row and they'll all be evaluated to true. For example, I'll just delete this all really quick. If I put if is greater x this is a very common type of question you'll see in computer science classes, right? Let's make this statement true, let's make this statement true, and then let's make another if statement. X is greater than 3, right? These are all true, right? And so let's say if x is greater than or equal to 5, we're going to reassign this variable and set it equal to 4, right? If x is greater than 4, we're going to reassign it equal to 2. And then if it's greater than 3, we're going to assign it to 1. X is equal to 1. Okay, cool. And then at the very end of this this is not the most readable code. It's not properly spaced, but bear with me. And we're going to print out X way down here. Hopefully no syntax errors or anything. Okay, and it's 1. So what happened here, right? So these are all true statements, right? So it evaluated this one, set it equal to 4, evaluated this one, keep in mind these are all true, set it equal to 2, and then finally evaluated this one and set it equal to 1, right? If these were else if statements, right? Let's say, let's make an if statement, right? If that's not true, right? X is greater than 7, which is not. X is equal to 3. This isn't going to evaluate because the statement isn't true. But let's change these all to else ifs. And this is, again, another type of question you'll probably see a lot of times on computer science exams. And now in this case, we're going to see that x should be equal to 4. Because once this first else if got evaluated, none of these other else ifs took place, basically. None of them evaluated because the first else if, as soon as the first else if evaluates to true, none of the others are going to run. Now if the first else if is false, now in this case, if we run this, we're going to see that it's equal to 2. Because even though this one was false, it still checks the next else if, but it's really just about when the first else if evaluates to true. Then it's going to basically break out of the entirety of this series of operations, and it's going to ride with whatever occurred between the brackets in the first else if that evaluated to true. So we spent a lot of times on if and else ifs. Now the final one. So let's say we wrote an if statement. Let's declare another integer. Well, actually, let's have some fun here. Let's say double length is equal to 10.5. Double width is equal to 5.5, right? And let's say double area is equal to length times width. Alrighty, cool. Let's make an if statement. Now I'm going to cover else statements, right? And else statements are really kind of your safety net. If all of your if statements, none of them evaluate to true, none of your else if statements evaluate to true, your else statement is kind of there to just make sure that something happens. And I'll show you what I mean, right? So let's say if area is less than 10, right? I don't think it will be. Well, what's area is less than 10? What's it going to be? 10.5? Whatever. Something around in the ballpark of 50-ish. 50, 60-ish. Let's see. But anyways, let's see. Cout. Area is small. And then we're going to make an else if statement, right? Else if area is less than 20. Cout area is sort of small. And now this is the syntax of our final operation, right? It's just going to be else, and there's not going to be these parentheses. It's just going to be these brackets, right? We're going to cout, let's print out, I don't care what the area is. Okay. Cool. And so let's run this. I don't care what the area is. But let's see what happened, right? So the first if statement evaluated to false, right? We don't have to worry about that. Second one, else if evaluated to false, we don't have to worry about that. Notice how the else didn't have a condition, but it evaluated no matter what. Because as long as it makes it to this else statement, it's going to evaluate. The way it's really going to run is this is going to evaluate if the if statement is true. The else if is only going to evaluate if there's no if statement that is true. And this else statement is, like I said, it's kind of your safety net. It's going to evaluate, make sure that something gets done, even if all of these above conditions are not met. So those are the three main types of operations that are very important for procedural control: if, and else statements, procedural programming rather. And so those are really fun to play around with. You can make make a small video game or whatever, right? If somebody does something, they get a certain amount of points, right? Um, they're really fun to learn with, and they start making you go from a programmer who just knows some basic variables and basic mathematics to somebody who can actually kind of put together, a program that it does different things and is dynamic. It's really cool and fun, to play around with. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Till next time, guys. Keep programming, keep having fun, and see you next time.